Alrighty, I think we are live. Max, are you there?
I'm there. How you going?
Yeah, good, good. Yourself?
Good. Excited for another round of footy.
Yeah, Keen. How'd you go last week after our live stream?
Uh, Pretty decent. Essendon Collingwood game pretty much went to script, which was nice. Had a lot of money on Roberts and Dacos, and they just sheer piggery around the back. So that was quite nice to watch. Having both in your fantasy teams as well is also very enjoyable.
I mean, that was no surprise to us as well, just because, we spoke, for anyone who listened last week, we heavily spoke about Roberts and Dacos, and that went exactly to script. So yeah, two happy punters here, and myself and Max. Hopefully a few others cleaned up as well. I also had a few other good reads that I've played as well. They were good. I know you went big on Houston as well. I was big on the unders in the Geelong Port game. Yeah, good weekend all around. Hopefully we can match it today. Should we get right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe we'll start with. I've seen a bit of chatter about where things now are on the tool. We have moved things around a little bit, so maybe I'll just quickly go over that just to clear any of those questions we had. Basically, no tools have disappeared. They've just moved from up here in the tools into the match hub. So the idea behind that was just get everything sort of centered in the one place where you can go game by game and do all your matchup in one go. So now if we're going to look at Collingwood Hawthorne today, I can just see all my CBAs, goal scorer, disposals, insights, everything in the one screen, and you need a bit of playing around, I guess, to go into each one. Like within projections, we've now got player and match both sitting there. In team profiles, we've got those nice graphs that Max came up with. In targets, we've got our ladders and our similar players and our DVP. And then our insights has, team splits, correlations, AI insights, things like that. So have a bit of a play around. I think you'll find what you need, but if you can't, always feel free to reach out and we'll show you where it is. Supposedly can't hear me. Let me see if I can fix that. Max, you talk for a bit. I'm going to try swap to another device.
Can they hear me?
Yeah, you said.
Okay. Well, I can't control the screen, but I'll happily share some thoughts. So tonight's match, Collingwood Hawthorne, is an interesting one because you've got probably a more friendly team for betting Collingwood, free flowing, coming up against a bit more of a stringent team in Hawthorn. And I was kind of running the analysis on like those sorts of matchups last year, like what tends to like overpower, I guess. Is it like the slow team versus the fast team? And the slow team usually plays up to the fast team. So that kind of means like you can kind of look to target the Hawthorn players who might have higher than usual disposal games because they're going to play in a higher than usual pace game. And then Collingwood players, it might not be their fastest pace game or whatever, but don't expect it to be completely show on the foot. And that's just, on average, um, not saying like that's going to happen tonight, but that is the general trend of what happens when slower teams meet faster teams.
I am
Um,
back now. Hopefully you can hear me a bit better now. I am a noob in this whole thing. I'm pretty sure I've jacked the volume up as high as I can, so might just have to yell a bit, and hopefully everyone can hear. But yeah, I agree with what Max said about the profiles. I've got it up here. You can see Pies are super free flowing as a team, and they tend to bring anyone else up to their level. So you can see Hawk sitting around the middle, and they'll probably lean more towards Collingwood style, which is just a betting galore. I feel like it's the simple rule of you got a Collingwood game, you've got good overs you can take. Is how I like to look at it.
yeah, and in saying that as well, though, I think one thing that's important to also be aware of now, because I already kind of looked at some prices, but this information it is known, right? So bookies do know about this. So there definitely is, and I think one of the new tools you've kind of released, Adam, is the kind of line history. So it might be interesting just to look at like someone like Carl Amon tonight. if we do have the line history that you could show, you're going to notice that his line's already way jacked up tonight, and it's most likely adjusting for. Now he's in a sick matchup. This is the team you'd want to bet him up. But like previous weeks, I think his line's been closer to like 21, 22 from memory. And I think today it's already up at like 23, 24. And the value of a disposal is like not something you should just be like, oh, whatever, it's a good matchup. It does matter. So some of these edges do start to get baked in. And so you do need to be very conscious of like the price you are taking or the line you are taking. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I had a similar look and similar thoughts looking today where bookies are catching on, especially as the season goes on, the trends are clear. And yeah, I feel like most of the Hawthorn players, I feel like they've baked that in. Although there's still a few that I'm liking, I think they probably haven't baked in enough. So yeah, if there are guys you love, and yeah, as Max said, don't tail blindly, you might be better off dropping a few levels and just playing them in multis, just at lower odds. Because yeah, if everyone can see the same thing, it's usually not value anymore. So if I guess we go back to the match hub, so yeah, as we said, super free flowing. You can see Collingwood give up second most in the league for disposals, so about 390 they give up uncontested possessions, give up marks, all the things we love to bet on, and then Hawks are pretty restrictive the other way. They give up not many disposals, not many fantasies, so I'd be careful taking Collingwood unders today, just with that in mind. And if we have a look at the lineups quickly, some big outs for Collingwood. Pendle's out, Howe out, Membry out, McCreary out. So, four of their clear best 23 with, aside from Darcy Moore, I mean, Ned Long's all right, but Bueller, Parker, a bit more inexperienced. And you could see Hawthorn have Sicily and Moore coming back in with Morrison and Dalton out. So definitely Hawthorn at full strength, I would say. Collingwood less so. So it's probably leaning a bit one way. There was some chatter today about the projections. They don't factor in lineup changes. So even though our projections do have Collingwood winning, I would factor in that there has been a lot of team changes. So it's probably a no bet for me in terms of, I guess, line on this one. But yeah, bookies are suggesting should be quite a comfortable Collingwood win. And I would, Hawthorn win. And I would tend to agree with that one. Yeah, so if we dive, I guess we can go into some targets just to look at off the bat. Definitely, like everyone's is sort of clear. Amon, Impey, Sicily, definitely big guys to target tonight. Just obviously careful with their lines. And then Gunston and Lewis, you wouldn't back his disposals anyway, so wouldn't worry too much about that. The unders is interesting because when you go across, it's flagging 17 different players from Collingwood as an unders play. So, back to what I was saying before of this narrative with a big Hawthorn win, Collingwood unders, Hawthorn overs. I'm a pretty big, I guess, script better. I think I spoke about it a bit last week where I like to look at how guys go in similar like game setups. So I'll head over to the prop tool and I'll have a look at this year and last year. I find last year still relevant for most. And for Collingwood, I'll go and filter for the MCG and I'll have a look at how players go in losses at the MCG. So immediately, Dacos is one that I know last week we were so heavy on his overs. This is one that I'm definitely leaning unders towards. You can see in his 6 matchups this year and last year where they have played at the G and lost, has only cleared twice. And in the tougher matchups, he does tend to go under. Hawthorne, he obviously only had 24 in the last time against them. And McGuinness is playing. He didn't tag last week, but there's always a chance that he tags this week. So I like the Dacos unders. He could even be someone that you fade in some group disposal markets. You could maybe chuck a little bit cheeky small odds on some of the Hawthorn players. But yeah, I'm leaning towards his under tonight, which is always scary to say with Dacos.
Yeah, he is a bit of a different, like his averages this year are just I think it will end up significantly higher than last year. So although previous season I think can be helpful, context is important. Like look at what he's doing this year is kind of another level. if I think that he's probably at a new level, but he might regress back to kind of his average from last year. But he hasn't gone below 30. He's got his lowest was 31 this year, I think. So yeah, but I do like looking at the MCG, and it's going to be a tougher matchup for Dacos for sure. But I think like it's also important to like look at their recent context as well because there's like a clear trend there. I think you kind of have like that average. If you click that average button,
Yeah, you could have a
you'll
look at how it's trending. We've also got this the rolling standard deviation, which shows you how they're progressing over time. So he tends to
uh,
have, I guess, patches where he plays well. You can see in the middle he had some patches, but I'd flag that he's had pretty easy matchups this year.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yes,
Carlton, Essendon, Adelaide, and St Kilda are all easy matchups for
that's
midfielders.
fair.
So
That's fair.
it's an interesting one for sure. I definitely wouldn't be backing his overs, and if you don't want to play his unders, I'd probably just leave it as a no bet for me personally.
Yeah, that's fair. The matchups this year have been like super soft.
Yeah. Um, and if we have a look, there was a few others that I liked tonight in the Collingwood unders. I thought Houston was one that I thought could be a nice under tonight. In terms of similar players, they're going at about 10% lower. Hawthorne are one of the hardest teams matchup wise for defenders in his spot, and then also a tough matchup in terms of general disposals conceded. So, another one where you could argue this season he's elevated, playing a better role, but how much of that is soft opposition at the G versus, you know, actually having a higher role? So another one up at that 24 and a half that I think is
Yeah,
quite high.
even with the better role, that's a super high line. Like it's adjusted for that role, but it's also like that. I imagine that's what his line will be like most games this year. And the fact that he's got a really tough matchup, and we probably think it could be a bit of a domination from Hawthorn, would kind of, yeah, feel like we're getting a decent value there.
I can't comment too much on how he was last year, but his averages at the G are only 20 this year and last year, and 20 in losses. So 24 is way higher, and it's probably a good time to also flag that we've now got this little line history overlay, so you can see how players' lines change. It's only been recording for a few weeks, but this will be a pretty good tool to see how players are shifting over time. And sometimes you can, pick out a guy whose line is just has overreacted to recent information. So, Houston's line was down at 21 and a half against Carlton, and now we're getting all the way up at 24 and a half. So it's a tough matchup, and his line's three higher than it was 2 weeks ago. To me, I'd suggest that's a bit of an overreaction to his recent form.
Yeah, and you've got the combination of crappy matchup, potential of big bad, domination. I like it as well.
Yeah, so that's another one I'd flag. There was another one I thought was, where was it? If I flag MCG result loss, and let's go to all in 2025 as well. I thought Lipinski is another one that I think has benefited. It's funny, all the guys we spoke about last week as good bets are now on the flip side, I think, unders bets. You see here, if I take away his losses, you can see all these 20s are pretty much in wins. So I think there's definitely an overreaction to that. And his line was down at, it's a similar line, but yeah, all these 20s I find were in wins. If we look at his splits down the bottom here, he has a three disposal drop in losses. So he's definitely a bit of a fair weather player where the tides are looking good. He seems to benefit from that. So another guy that I'm probably leaning towards his unders tonight. You could probably do a nice little multi with a few of the Collingwood players in their unders. It's just about finding the guys in those right spots. And these over on the matchup, if you want a good way to look at this, you can go to the insights, and I'll sort by Collingwood, and I'll just put in loss, and I'll put in MCG, and then you can have a look here at who benefits and who doesn't once I add it for this year. So you can see some of these big drop offs. Ned Long's one that seems to struggle. Um, Side bottom seems to struggle a bit. So yeah, there's definitely some drop offs you can target tonight, I would say. Maybe we'll have a look at the more fun overs bets. I'll have a look at the Hawthorne side, and then we'll dig into some of the questions that people are asking because I've seen a few bets flagged here. There's a lot I love on the Hawthorne side. I don't know if you feel the same today, but yeah, I'm ignoring. I'm fading the guys that I feel like they've already priced in. I feel like they've already priced in Newcomb, MP, Sicily, and Amon to those lines. So I think
Like,
there's a lot of yeah. Sorry.
sorry, I just want to show like the line history for just to kind of illustrate the point for like Impy, for instance.
Ah, yeah, good call. So you could see over time his line was at 20, 20, 21, 23, and now it's all the way up to 24. So, as 3 weeks ago, his line was four lower. So there's a good example Max was talking about.
Yeah, it's just isn't like it just feels quite as in it's a great matchup. It's just you are taking a very high line, and I think when it is baked into the consensus line or the kind of over under line, there still can be value if it's a really gravy matchup. There still can be value at the alts, but you're just taking on a much higher. There's just more risk in that because usually there's more margin baked into those prices. Something you can look at, but just be aware that like they are adjusting for these sort of some of these like matchup trends. So you still need to be thinking about, am I willing to take it at this price at this line? Does that
Yeah,
still make sense?
because everything's pointing green for MP. You can see trending up, good matchup, good DVP. Similar is good, and he has hit 25 in three of his last four. So, I still feel like he can hit that 25. I just would love this way more if it was at like 22 or 23. Newcomb being another one where you can see the line has started to increase for him. It's all the way up to 27 now. So a few weeks ago, you were getting him, in that 22, 23, 24 range. That 27 is a super high line that, I personally just don't feel comfortable playing the overs on that. And yeah, it's important just not to force these sort of things. The few guys I wanted to mention, and then I'll go to some questions from the chat. Josh Ward is definitely one I like at his overs. I saw you could get around 21 recently. This is him filtered for MCG wins. You can see he clears 20 every time, and he does have that upside of going 24 Carlton, 26, 27, 29. So I feel like Josh Ward's a potential ladder play. I saw his fantasy look pretty decent as well. Another one where, he can get all the way up to those 90s, 100s. There's a few of these Hawthorn guys that I just love their upside, especially for a team that just loves to spread the footy around. Like they don't have anyone that goes above 25 much, which just, gives a lot of opportunity on the up. Connor McDonald's another one, which I feel like, if you look at his last four matchups at the G and wins, he's gone 24, 28, 26. So another one that I love his overs and definitely feel comfortable playing some alts on. And then as well, Dylan Moore, same boat. You can see here against Collingwood 25 last time, and you can see he's hitting high 20s, mid 20s a lot of the time. So another one. I'm sounding repetitive here, but the gist is that I'm loving some Hawthorn alts tonight, loving some Hawthorn overs. And there's some nice multis I reckon you can play around with having a few of these guys to hit 20. D'Ambrosio was another one that I loved. You can see here, he three times look at his last year to finish. He was going 24, 26, 30, 25. All in matchups they're expected to win. And, his line history, it has gone up. But if we had his line history last year, I'd say it was probably around that 18, 19 point similar anyway. So definitely another guy with upside. And then the other one I wanted to flag was Cam McKenzie. He might not have the upside, but he's got a pretty good floor in the sense and a pretty good range where, on any given day, he's probably going to get in that like 18 to 21 range. And I just feel like with a good matchup, good opposition, and you can see down here in wins, this is a massive, massive split. He goes 19 in wins and he goes 11 in losses. So that's another guy that I love. I love the look of his overs. Obviously inflated a bit by this 30, but yeah, I think another one that I like. I'll have a look at some of the comments we've got. First one was Ginnivan 29 plus. Let's have a look here. So if you're not aware, you can basically just type in the matchup up here. Sorry, you can type in the bet, click enter, and it'll give you a suggestion. So, the odds, it's not loving it at $5.75. He hasn't cleared 29 in any matchup recently. So you'd have to be getting pretty juicy odds for that to happen. I know it's Collingwood and the history with Collingwood and the easy matchup and everything, but I'd say 29 is probably a bit higher than I would like to play personally. We've got, what else do we have here? Amon Fantasy looks a good play at odds on Lads. Let's have a look at Amon. So we're getting about 95 for him. If I look at Amon at the G, good matchup. He hasn't cleared 95 that many times in a similar matchup. Obviously, Collingwood he did, but again, it feels like another one where they've already baked it in. His upside beyond this 95 doesn't look that high. And funny enough, he looks like a guy that seems to play better in losses. You can see down here, he goes for 26 disposals in losses, and he goes for 24 in close games. So as good as the matchup is, it's interesting enough that he doesn't seem like a guy that benefits too much from that. But then on the hindsight, on the flip side, in good matchups, he's gone 28 each time, and he has gone 100. So it's always tough when you get signals going in different directions, and I feel like your bias can always tell you to play overs just because we love the overs. But if you've got conflicting things, it makes it a bit tougher to, I guess, look at that. So, yeah, similar here. Fantasy, if I look at teams giving up most fantasy points, he's only cleared this twice. So, yeah, I don't love the 95 line. I would have felt better about that if that was at about 90. The comments are flying in. Max, thoughts on Hardwick Marks? Couldn't find much value in anyone else, even though many Hawks players have great matchups.
Well, let's pull up the data and have a look.
Well, let's just go in here. Well, let's see what his line is, and then I can have a deep dive into it. It's just looking like 5.5 is about what's on offer. Hardwick 6+ marks. There you go. So definitely signaling you've got a clear back overs over here. A lot of favourable things. Collingwood leaking marks, top 3 to similar players. I like this one where it talks about similar players and how often they clear that 6+. If you look down this list, 14 out of 20 have cleared that 6+ against Collingwood. So that's definitely my only concern is that it looks like it was earlier in the year. You can see these last few games, not as many clears, but 14 out of 20 is a pretty good strike rate. And, you see the upside is definitely there for Hardwick. So, yeah, definitely don't mind the play. Definitely don't mind it. Gunston 3+ goals.
Yeah, this was something I brought up.
Yeah, you could talk about Gunston here, your boy.
So another case where sometimes the odds catch up. For the whole year, they were kind of offering really friendly odds, and last week was $1.88, and previous weeks was around that mark or higher. But now it's down to like $1.45, and the hit rate is still really impressive, and the amount of shots he is having is crazy, but it's getting baked into the price. So, and $1.45, it's expected this is going to happen, right? So I think it's probably a bit too short now. But it's a great matchup. We're thinking Hawthorne are going to score goals, but you're just getting really short odds, and short odds doesn't mean good, it's still got to evaluate it in the context. you can see the suggestion here would be fading, but like he's been pretty crazy this year. Uh, so I don't think it's amazing value by any means, but he is in incredible form.
The sort of guy that, I think we got 7 good rounds out of his odds, and it's sort of time to farewell that one. I know we love playing it every week, but it seems like the bookies have finally caught on to that one. So you almost have to just, count your money you made in those first few weeks with him and move on to find other edges.
Yeah, and the thing with goals in footy is because they don't offer the underside, often they're not really giving you that fair of a price. And so you really like, I was kind of toying with this idea, but every price you see by default, you should kind of think is shit, unless there is like, you, with footy particularly, like bookies aren't just giving you for fun pricing that is value. So we by default need to kind of be skeptical, and especially when it's these one-sided markets where there is no underside. So this could have 20-30% margin on it. So you kind of need to do this kind of bottoms up research to figure out whether or not it is good price still. But yeah, I just think it's too short.
Yeah, I
Although
would.
I think you probably kick three, but it's too short.
He'd probably kick three, but I wouldn't put money on it at a dollar
Yeah,
forty-five.
yeah.
We've also got loving all the questions. It's good. Worth chucking these unders on a double pick in. Good question. If we have a
Yeah,
look
like
over at the projections tab, if we go to player, you can build pick 'em combos straight out of here. For whatever reason, I think there's a naming mishap. Connor McDonald's missing on this side. But if we look at pick 'em combos and we click less, yeah, you can see a lot of these Collingwood players being flagged in the unders in these pick'ems. So, some of these guys we spoke about, like Houston, is showing up in there. I did have a look at the projections earlier. They are still liking Dacos, and I was curious as to why. The rationale seemed to be that, I had asked, I spoke to my model, like my my projections, and asked why, and this is still Collingwood totaling about 350 disposals, which is slightly over what Hawthorne are giving up this year. So I guess the theory is that someone has to have those disposals, and with Pendlebury out, the projections just aren't really loving anyone else to take up those reins. So, there's every chance Collingwood get mauled and they only have 300 touches, and then at that case, his projections would drop. But yeah, that's probably why he's flagged all the way up at 35, even though it's, a lot higher than his line and possibly an overreaction. But if we look
yeah.
at these, yeah, you go.
I was going to say, what do you think about Pendlebury bringing out? Who's getting those CBAs? Because that could be an interesting lean. And he's already been out one game this year, so we kind of have a little sample size of what happened in that past game. Um,
Yeah, so I was thinking, I had a look at this, and Ned Long seems to be the guy that stands out. If we look at if
I
we
think
look at, and
McCreary got a big bump
well,
in that one.
McCreary's out as well, but
Yeah,
Long was up at 71% in that game that Pendlebury didn't play. So I had a look at Ned Long earlier, and the only thing I don't like is the matchup. But if you look at games where Ned Long gets 50% of time in the middle, he does get up in these areas a lot more. And if we overlay this with CBA, you can see his higher CBAs do tend to correlate with better outputs. So if I bump this to, 70%, which is what he had last time against Pendles, this goes all the way up to, a 67% hit rate. So it looks like Ned Long could be the guy that fills that void. The only thing is obviously just the matchup. But yeah, I like if you can get decent enough odds. I like Ned Long at 15 plus to chuck in a multi, and you could maybe chuck him like an alternate at 20 plus if you can get something like,
Yeah.
I don't know, $3
He's
odds.
285 right now on Ladbrokes, where everyone else is way lower, around 215
Yeah,
on the month.
I'd sprinkle some 20 plus on Ned Long at those odds. Um, I guess yeah, I probably like his upside more than clearing the line, but this history does look pretty good, assuming he picks up Pendle's midfield time.
And he got 24 against Hawthorne last year. They were probably similar. hardish matchup then.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
yeah, it's kind of like a conditional thing where it's like there's a strong chance he's gonna get that CPA time, particularly with McCreary, who took the void last time for Pendlebury out. So I think the Goey might have been out that game as well, but he will probably come in the middle a bit. But he should see a fair share.
Yeah, I mean, De Goey is a shell of himself anyway, so
That's
it's
fair.
easy for him to kick a few goals against Essendon when we suck. So yeah, De Goey, as much as he'll pop in a little bit with McCreary out, it feels like they're going to run Dacos, Long, and possibly even Anderson in there. But even the sounds of those three with De Goey in there doesn't sound like it's super promising up against Hawthorn's midfield. So could be a tough one for them. Uh, Thoughts on a most disposal multi with Dacos and Battle? If we have a look over our most disposals tool we built recently, it's obviously loving Nick Dacos, as I spoke about before with those projections. I guess because no one on Hawthorn does go super high, there's probably still value in Dacos around that $2.50. I can see on PointsBet they're offering $2.50 in this big group, but there's obviously a lot of people here, so you'd have to be cautious with that. But most bookies are offering about $2 for him most disposals. I don't hate it. I just always, hate the variance with so many guys involved and taking someone so short price. So, if you want to multi it with, yeah, there you go. Battle is also standing out, definitely. Um, yeah, if you trust the most disposals projector, multing the two could be a nice little small play. It'd give you what, probably 10, $12. So it could be worth a cheeky little bonus bet or something on that one. But with Hawthorn, I just feel like any of these guys could get 25 tonight. But yeah, Battle is being offered the best odds out of all of them, out of these four Hawthorn guys. So yeah, not a bad shout. I've seen worse, I would say.
Just a quick one going back to the Ned Long stuff. If I just had a quick look at his tackles, and yeah, again, conditional on that like CBA role, but if he does have, if we are thinking he's going to be there, you can get like $1.75 for 6 tackles, which looks pretty nice. Um, do you have any data kind of on stoppages at him and like whether that kind of projecting if there will be lots of stoppages, I guess?
Over in the match hub in the team profiles, we've got the styles and angles. You could use the pressure and you can use the I guess the rucks and mids to sort of have a look at that. You could see that Collingwood are quite poor at stoppages, which you know tends to lead to the ball being a bit more free flowing out of there, which probably then doesn't really favour Ned Long. So if I was liking guys in tackles, I'd probably be looking in this grinding area and the high pressure. I feel like if both teams are up in that high pressure and, you know, even in this defensive grind area on territory, I'd probably be happy with that. But, the data is all saying free flowing shootout, Hawthorn attacking edge, Hawthorn ruck edge. So, yeah, it might
Yeah,
be a
but Ned
case of just the Hawks mids
Long
cleaning
plays
up.
for Collingwood, so like he's always, but like given he plays for Collingwood, he's still kind of hit that in 10 over the last 11. I don't know. I think if he's going to play that mid for a row, then you can get $1.75 for 6 tackles. When he's done that previously, it's like almost a shoe in. So I think it works out well, and he's always going to have the Collingwood free flowing stuff, but that hasn't stopped him in the past with
Yeah,
that role.
yeah, very fair. Nath Robinson said, I faded Newcomb using the line history data on my X today. Love that. Shout out to Nath, great tipster over on X. So it gives out some nice free plays there. Yeah, we spoke about it a bit, but yeah, the line history might actually be a good time to talk about. I've got this new tool I've put out called the prop shifts, which is a very similar concept where it looks at you know, guys' history of their lines and anyone that has jumped a lot relative to that. So this is another good one that I guess is not working now. Maybe I'll drop this shift. If I go to AFL and I look at one, yeah. So maybe there aren't too many. Oh, it's because AFL we haven't recorded enough games. That's probably why. But yeah, the idea is if guys have jumped a lot relative to their average, if there's nothing clear as to what's driving that average other than matchups and things, you can use this to your advantage and suggest that they might be overreacting. So for whatever reason, this isn't working right now. But yeah, the idea of odds history, if we look at Newcomb and we go to his overlay, yeah, as I was saying before, he goes at 22, 25, 24, and he actually missed the line in both these games, and 25 again. So 27 is just a lot higher than he's usually at. So even considering the matchup, definitely some values potentially in the unders. What's the feel on Battle today? We did discuss it briefly just now, most disposals. I do feel like he has that upside for sure. And he did go, 29 last week against Gold Coast. And he has gone 22, 23. It's just another one where it's probably been baked into the odds. I think the 20 plus is probably a nice one to chuck in the multis. I see no harm with throwing, if you can get, in that $1.60 range in the multis, that's good. But I just feel like there's so much ball to go around in that Hawthorn defense that surely they can't all have 20-25 tonight. I feel like someone's going to get it less. I just don't know who that is. And now with Sicily back in the lineup, someone is going to, lose out in this. It's just a matter of trying to pick who that is. Let's have a look. What else we got here? Impey is a 16 disposal player, huge overreaction. I do think Impey has become a bit overrated in terms of the line he's been offered. He used to be down in this 20, and I remember last year he even used to be in this 17, 18 range. So he's definitely in a bit of a purple patch at the moment, but it is an easy matchup tonight, so I can't argue with it too much. So much value in this game for low alts. I've seen App Hardwick 13 plus, Mackenzie 14 plus, Battle 16 plus, D'Ambrosio 14 plus. Yeah, Max, do you want to talk about alts a bit? I know we've spoken about it a bit together in terms of it's always tough with hit rates and things like easy matchups because even if a guy is going 90, 95%, 100% at that line, it's just such low odds. And the variance that can be created from multing all those together is a bit tricky. So maybe if you want to talk about, I guess our thoughts on multis and, multiplying edges together and stuff, it might give a bit of insight into how we feel about those, low alternate
Well,
overs.
yeah, you should be really aware of what you're taking. Like, taking something at $1.17 and then you're multiplying it into if it's the same match and another $1.20, and now your combined multis even lower odds. Yes, there might be some correlation between those plays, but you're not it's not that's not like a hack to value. You can definitely though find good value at the lower lines. Combine and it's also an easier way to bet because you're not taking on massive variance. And just because something's $1.17 doesn't mean that bet's expected to win 90+% of the time, whatever it is, 85% of the time. So just because it wins doesn't mean it worked in your favor. And you also got the when you're doing 5 plays in the game, like the injury risk becomes actually significant, and that can just cook your whole thing when players get injured. Oh, so just yeah, when you are doing a lot of small legs together, it might feel like this is a safer way to bet, but you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit, and you're better off kind of choosing like one with fair value than 4 low odds with bad value on each of them. But they feel like it's okay because it's still an 80% chance of hitting. If that kind of logic makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Um, we also have here, I know it's degenerate. Oh, sorry, crisp unders I'm looking at. Yeah, crisp. If we have a look at how he's gone, he went 16 against Hawthorn last year and then went 22 against them as well. Another one where his line is possibly, it got down to 18 and a half, his line against Freo. So we're getting it all the way up at 21 and a half, which is probably a bit up, but, the matchup's tough. it's tough against the DVP is tough. Similar players go -12, and against Hawthorne, if we can look at past years as
He
well, he does
he
tend to
did.
like Hawthorne.
I was going to say he did have 38% CBAs against Essendon, which is pretty high for him. Um, Maybe in line to have a bigger night with Penderbury. I don't know if that yeah, but which would obviously be something to look at. But yeah, the similar players to see a -12, that's like a pretty large. Um, like you don't see many -12s for a player of this sort of caliber with the similar players. So that means like that outside mid type player has struggled quite a lot against Hawthorn recently.
Yeah, if we look down here at the similar players, you'd say the only ones that probably cleared their lines were Bailey Smith, Zach Merritt. Yeah, that's probably it. I mean, there's 20 guys in here, and there's not many that are clearing that line. So yeah, I definitely like the unders. It's just, yeah, I have a soft spot for guys when they play against certain opponents. I know it can be overstated because so much changes over time, but yeah, I'd say I'd definitely lean towards that under for sure. And we'll see what our suggests. There you go. It suggests the over. So another one that could probably go either way. I don't have a strong opinion on either side. Um, I know it's degenerate, but any plays on the 5 for 5 with Pullum on points bet? I haven't played around too much with them. Max, have you looked into the Pullums at all?
Yeah, I really briefly, but because they're setting the matchup, you're just kind
Sorry,
of
the five
limited
for
to
fives. Yeah,
yeah. So, but if you can use some of the tools and you think this player has a decent edge over the other one, then like it makes sense. But yeah, it's again the product is geared towards giving you kind of crap value. Um, but if you can make it work, or you can find edges you like, but they're forcing you into playing. I would much rather play a pick 'em, where I get the edge based on line out EV, which we kind of spoke about last week, but just finding pick'ems where they're out by a disposal to the rest of the market, I think that's a way you get better value and you actually know that you're getting some edge as opposed to being forced into picking between two options.
yeah, and yeah. I guess it's tough because the difference with the pick 'em, you have so many options. The only time I would take the 5 for 5 is if the 5 legs on offer are EV relative to the other bookies. But the chances of that happening, and they've been very selective with the five they pick. I would just be, yeah, I'd be surprised if I have a look at this Collingwood one, for example. Um, they've got Dacos 31.5, Newcomb 27.5, Impey 24, Chris 22, Ward 22. So I just feel like they've been quite selective with these and tough to
Oh,
get a good.
sorry. I didn't realize it was over underlines. I thought it was like head to head. But yeah,
Oh no,
same,
it's
same.
over under, but they only give you the five, and you have to pick over under of those five.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, if you could find value, if the line is off, then yeah, go for it. But I think you'd be able to find similar value with a Pick'em, and you have way more options.
Yeah,
Because
for
Pick'em
sure.
also like Pick'em Dabble put themselves out there by pricing over unders for marks and tackles. They're definitely not sharp. So there's a and they're really pricing up a lot of stuff that other bookmakers don't even bother touching. So yeah, there's value in pick'em. So I'd much prefer just doing a pick'em if I was trying to go for a 5 leg, 25x payout.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow our stuff, you know how big we are on the pick'em from the EV. You can get in that. So yeah, definitely team pick'em over team 5 for 5. Nash averaged 23.8 last four versus Collingwood, +5 to his average. Thoughts? Let's have a look at his splits so we can see where is it if we go to Hawthorne. So he goes +21 against them in his fantasy. So there's definitely, if I go opponents and I go for Collingwood, if I want to go all years, you just have to obviously be careful with how far back you're going. But yeah, these 7 matchups, he's cleared 20 in 5 out of 7. There's definitely some upside, but yeah, it's just tough with the context of each game being so different. So I feel like you can only lean so much into history against players unless the team has stayed pretty similar and the context and everything is quite similar. Which given how good Hawthorn have become, I don't know how clear that is. So yeah, I guess it's food for thought that overs. You could maybe play him a little alt, but yeah, I don't have a strong enough read on his actual line there. What else we got? Oh, we've got a lot in here. If someone doing well in wins is a big factor, would you not just multi it with Hawks money lines since it's correlated? Max, you might have different thoughts. I do enjoy correlating. I think it depends on the odds being offered, and it depends on how the bookie tends to, I guess, boost those odds when you multiply it. I like the idea of like anti-correlated bets. So I'll take like a Collingwood player with a Hawthorn win. I tend to get a nice little bit of a boost with that. Um, but yeah, if your play is strictly contingent on Hawthorn winning and it going to script, then yeah, if you can get a good enough boost from the money line, then I personally like that. But yeah, I know others might be skeptical of that approach. What's your thoughts, Max?
Yeah, it all just comes down to what price you eventually get by molting it together. If it compensates for that risk that you're taking on, then yeah, I like it. Makes sense. And then you just have to be aware that you are kind of like you're playing into conditional probabilities. So your bets are conditional. It doesn't mean it's a bad bet, but like if Collingwood if it doesn't go to script, then you kind of just have to eat that. Even if your player goes over and Collingwood lose or whatever. I mean Hawthorn lose. So no, I think it's fine as long as the price it justifies what you're doing.
Yeah, and funny enough, reading the comments here, Max Jenkum said similar to what I was saying. He said, surely you'd want to pair Hawks moneyline with a Collingwood bet to get the reverse correlation boost. Pairing Hawks moneyline with a Pro Hawks doesn't usually give you any extra benefit. So yeah, I agree with that. Just depends on the boost you're getting, and if you're getting a solid, you know, odds outlay on what you've put in, thinking about whether it's worth actually adding that second leg at $1.20 or whatever it is Hawthorn's paying. How about under 173.5? Whenever Collingwood are a bit competitive, this line barely hits. Thoughts? Our projections do have it under. It's got it at about 160 today, and the line does seem to be creeping up. It looks like it's up at about 175 right now. It seems to suggest that both Hawthorn and Collingwood tend to score a bit less at the G, them going, as a ground 7% less. My only fear is that you said it's contingent on a competitive game. I don't know how competitive this will be for Collingwood. You can have a look at the history here. The last three games have all been 50 plus. So hasn't been much competitive either way recently. And, Hawthorn this year, when they're not competitive, it's blowout games. It tends to go over, against Essendon, it was 220 against uh, actually, it has gone under still. So Hawthorn was Gold Coast 175, and then Doggies was 168. So Hawks tend to clear this line in more contested games, and then Collingwood in the blowout against Essendon it went over. Collingwood in the blowout against Brisbane went over, and then Saints went over as well. So I would lean under, but I don't have a strong enough opinion on this one. Um, Ned Reeves 25 plus hitouts. Bit of a niche market there, which we love. If I have a look at Ned Reeves, 25. So he's gone 24, 24, and 40 in his last three. Supposedly Collingwood are giving up, bottom four for hitouts. I would think that that's with them rocking Cameron and Steen. That mix is working pretty well for them. And, Hawthorn with them, they run Meek and Reeves as well. So if we look at this matchup and we have a look at ruck contests, it's almost a 50-50 split. So if you're confident enough that Reeves is going to get more of that exposure around the ground, then yeah, I don't mind it. But I don't love playing a ruckman hit outs if they're splitting ruck time 50-50. It's just not for me personally. How about Massimo for four tackles at $3.40 last 4 weeks? hit 3 times. Don't hate it. I just think, again, we were talking about this free flowing game and the lack of pressure Collingwood put on. It makes me question how much of, you know, opportunities there will be for D'Ambrosio to lay tackles. And this sort of backs it up where Collingwood are conceding the third least amount of tackles, which suggests they're not getting tackled much, which is probably because, they're a bit of traffic cones at the moment and very free flowing gives less stoppages for that to happen. Just on first glance, Gold Coast are a pretty stoppage heavy team, as are the Doggies. So I'm not surprised he went over in those, but yeah, he does like the G. He's gone over, and four's not a lot, but yeah, I guess at 340, it's like it's a little sprinkle. I wouldn't go crazy on it. That's for sure. Well, Max, you'll like this one. Ned Long is also $10 for 10 tackle on points bet. A bit of upside there. Market average
Mm,
around $6.
mm. Again, if he gets that role, which is, I think there's a high likelihood he could. I don't really know who else would. Um, yeah, he's a tackling machine, and he might be following Newcomb or something as well. So could be something.
If we put his
What's his history?
CBA, yeah, if you put his CBA up to 70%, he clears 10. You are getting value. He clears 10, 25% of the time, and you're getting about $10 on that. So,
I
you know,
like it as a speculative play.
yeah. Always disclaimers on that. But if the roll's there, and he had 11 last time against Collingwood as well, against Hawthorne as well. So, not the worst $10 odd bet I've seen thrown around.
Yeah, I like it.
Squizzy. I feel like Anderson might be the play here with Pendles being out. He might get most of his CBAs. Yeah, I did speak about that before. I think there's definitely a chance that I think Long and Anderson are the biggest benefactors from this. It's just tricky that Hawthorn are a tough matchup. Hawthorn, they're middle of the ground for middle of the pack for inside midfielders, but as a team, they only give up bottom four for disposals. So Anderson is obviously quite new into his career, so he hasn't cleared more than seven here anyway. So you'd have to be super trusting that he's getting a full CDA role here for me to even think about it. Um, yeah, I just think Long is more likely to fill that role. Thoughts on Darcy Cameron under 15 and a half? Let's have a look.
Yeah,
Hawks for
I was
sure.
getting a look at that before because I do think he's gonna come up against a tough ruck matchup. The Hawthorn rucks have been pretty restrictive if you look at their DVP this year. And they haven't really played anyone of note besides Grundy, who they kept to a pretty quiet game by Grundy standards. Um, and yeah, Darcy Cameron's also been a bit more like not kind of he's been alternating with Steen kind of with that. Not he's not always around the ball like historically. So I do he's got a not so friendly role for disposals anymore in a tough matchup, both team wise and positionally. 15 might be yeah. I don't mind it.
It seems like the bookies are pricing this in a bit because he was all the way up at 18 and a half against Carlton and then 17 and a half last week. So he's back down into this 15 range. So bookies are
Mm.
definitely on it, it seems. But yeah, don't hate it. Uh,
Yeah, it's a pretty different role for him. Like the fact that if then the Rux data, you can see that like CVAs, he's not always in there. Steen last week had 66% of the CVAs, but in the ruck contest, last week's I don't know, it was a bit hard to read into because it was such a mauling in the end, but he's not at he gets to a lot of the ruck contests, but last week he was at less than Steen, so if that's something they want to keep going forward with, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a different role for him to previous years, that's for sure.
yeah, 100%. How accurate is similarity? How is it calculated? Good question. we have a little info tab here that explains it if you want to read it more afterwards. But it basically takes a look at, I think it's 30 something different stats. Oh, there you go, 49 statistical categories, and just looks at like-minded players that have similar averages in terms of, proportionately where their stats are. So, that can be things like intercepts, rebound 50s, inside 50s, all that advanced stuff. It basically like forms profiles of different players based on their proportion of stats, and then it uses that to find similar players. I guess why that's interesting is, for example, here there are ruckmen that overlap with midfielders, just because for ruckmen they have that similar like contested style of footy where it's around the ball and things like that. So I don't have proper weighting on certain stats to filter out players from other positions, but you can do that yourself. I could take, if I didn't like it, I could take Parish out. I could take, you could just take all the midfielders out that are popping in here in case, and see what that does. And you see here, it's minus 13% of a matchup. So if I take Robottom out as well, yeah, minus 12. So with just Ruckman in there, it's definitely there's only three Ruckmen. Well, yeah, even if I don't know if you want to count Riccardi, but it doesn't. No Ruckman has cleared this line. No primary ruck has cleared this line this year against Hawthorne. So yeah, unders could definitely be on the cards. Do you guys use Market EV for AFL at all? Max, you want to talk about Market EV AFL for a bit?
Yeah, no, I love market EV, and I keep kind of harping on the same point, but I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's really important. It just matters about the price you're getting. Like that's what's important. So market EV is great. It showcases a lot of information, but you can't just blindly take these bets. We have other tools for that. But market EV is purely informational, and it's a good place to start before you do research. So you could, if you put maybe filter for $3 odds. I
What
kind
you
of
don't like?
spotted
You
that.
don't like Ned Long at $126 odds for 3 goals, your boy?
Load up the house on that. Yeah, so the way I use Market EV is I see what's standing out and then I would do research on it. Or the other thing I like to do is I like to open up. So if you open up that Ned Long one and see where the other bookies are sitting, if you can see that all the other bookies are kind of grouped around one price and there's one significant outlier, this is across all sports as well. That tends to be a pretty good indicator that, okay, maybe Ladbrokes is just fully out on an island here, and it looks like everyone's around like 215 or lower, except one. But then you've got Ladbrokes at 285. So just that on its own is a great reason to want to look at that and just make sure it checks out. And then we've kind of done that analysis before. So, but truthfully, a lot of the stuff you see here isn't advisable to bet. But that's because the thing with footy, or the thing with these one-sided markets, is because they put so much margin on them. You really need to be particular about what you're taking, and don't just take a bet because, it's $1.20. It should hit. That $1.20 might have 30% margin on it, which means it's a crap value, and it's still going to win more often than it's not. But just yeah. So the idea with market EV is not to just take anything with a big number, but to quickly highlight where there could be some value, and then you will need to validate it. And I particularly like combining it with the implied EV tool as well. On the implied EV tool, you can use you can add a filter for the prices, so you can filter for things that have a good historical hit rate and a good price, and that again just gives you that 1-2 punch of value of, okay, I'm getting a good historical data here. So the price is validated by history, and then I'm also getting a good price on the market, because the market's trying to price things below value. So if you can find prices above the market and in excess, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So if there are guys, we spoke about here that you like the look of, and then they spot it in market EV, they come up, that's something that I'd think about. Like Ned Long tackles, which we spoke about, Unibet's clearly way out on their 7 and 6 plus. So those are times, yeah, it's definitely one with a bit of extra context is good to consider. Just conscious we're running out of time here, so I'll quickly skim through these last ones. Is there a time frame you recommend for the line out EV tool within 30 minutes of start, etc.? Line out EV tool, Yeah, I would say similar to the other EV tools, where for sports like NBA, the closer to the time is obviously better because that's when lineups, injuries, and things are locked in. So at that point, the bookies have as much information as possible, which means the odds are likely to be as accurate as possible. So at that point,
Yeah.
we would suggest you're getting a more accurate, I guess, frame of EV. I wouldn't say it holds up with every sport. Like baseball, I think lineups lock in a bit earlier, and then footy as well. So NBA is the one I would definitely say for line out EV to do closer, but the others, I don't think, a few hours out is too unreasonable.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a trade-off with risk. Sometimes betting far out helps you because the price moves in your favor even more, and other times it might move against you. Um, it's just something you need to like kind of judge for yourself a little bit. But generally speaking, the closer you can get to the game, the better. But doesn't mean it's not value if you took it a few hours before. But just be prepared that it could move against you. It's just that or it could move more in your favor. It's just something a risk that happens when you take things further out from the start.
Yeah. And then last one on line out EV tool, what number do you like to set as the minimum consensus books, Max?
Again, more is better. So more is always going to be better. But if you also know the sport a bit, or you kind of understand pricing a bit, like you can kind of even if there's not just because there's not four doesn't mean you can't still find a good line. And remember, like disposals are worth more the lower the line. So like if you can see lines that are um, at a lower level, but there's only two bookmakers pricing it, but you're getting a free disposal. It's a bit of a judgment call because you need to trust those two bookies are good. But always getting a free disposal is a pretty good position to be in. It kind of means one of those lines has to be profitable because of how much one disposal is worth. But I would say you probably want four at least. With basketball, there's so many now because we're adding in all these other books that you're kind of fine. Footy, you only have at max, I think, five books provide over unders. So you're always kind of going to be a little pressed. But yeah, you want more the better. But don't just shy away if there's not as many. But it probably just requires again, there's another level of risk that's applied to it. Doesn't mean it's not value. And yeah, there's usually some good pick-ems here, but it doesn't look like any tonight so
There's a
much.
few down the bottom, but yeah, pretty low stakes for that one. I think we're pretty much ready to sign off. If we want to maybe get a little bet of the day together based on some of those things we spoke about, I'm gonna have a quick play around on Sportsbet here and see what we can come up with based on who we spoke about. So, Josh Ward is one we said that we like the look of, um, and then Dan Brosio was another one.
A Collingwood
Uh,
under.
yeah, if we go D'Ambrosio 18, Ward 20, and then which was our favourite disposal under probably I'd lean either Lipinski or Houston. What do you
Yeah,
got?
I like.
Let's lean. Let's go Houston. So, if you go Houston under 24 and a half, Ward 20 plus, D'Ambrosio 18 plus, that's giving you $3.30, which I don't hate for you know, with the promo on offer where they say you get, bonus back if it misses. If you felt a bit more spicy, you could chuck in a few guys like Connor McDonald, Dylan Moore, as well, just to get that up a bit higher if you like the look of that as well. Show us the slip. I don't know how to share this. Oh, there we go. There's the slip, $3.30. Oh, I think Sportsbet's crashing, but yeah, we had that out at $3.30 for those three. So I wouldn't be as confident. It's not as clear of reads tonight as it was with, Dacos Roberts, but yeah, definitely still a lot to like tonight. But yeah, I think that's all from me. Max, anything before we sign off?
No, no, I think that's it. It was really, really good call. I've got some good bets I want to go place now, so I'm gonna spend the next little bit getting some bets on.
Max is going to go chuck 10K on all these Ned Long alternates.
Ned Long is gonna buy me a house. That's the play.
Good stuff, Maxi. Well, yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. We'll catch you next week.